Before we get started with this episode, I wanted to share with you that earlier this year, we started doing more of our podcasts as video podcasts. All of our audio and video episodes are available on our YouTube page. We'd love it if you'd check it out. And please, while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our channel. This way you get notified of new videos and new episodes that are posted. You can also find all of our videos on our website at MokenasFrontPorch.com or by searching Mokena's Front Porch on YouTube. Matt and I hope you enjoy this episode, and please be sure to share our podcast with a friend. We're out here, Matt, at the Yunker farm today.
Absolutely.
We have a very special video that we want to share with you in this episode. Matt, you brought this to me and I was really excited about it. Give an idea what the video is and then where we got it from.
So what you'll see in this video, which is a really, really cool one, is you get kind of half of it is Eddie Yunker himself, just kind of telling stories, talking about his parents, who bought this farm back in the 1920s, about 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, talking about their days on the farm, talking about growing up on the farm, and other assorted funny stories and stuff like that. And then the second half is really, really cool. I like the whole video, but I especially am thrilled about this. You could call it the second half because he, Eddie Yunker, Mr. Yunker, is kind of going on a walking tour of this part of the farm here, showing the viewer around at what the different outbuildings are and what their purposes were and what their history is. And it's like, there's no better thing than this, getting the lay of the land from Eddie Yunker himself.
And you see it as a working farm. This is when it was still he's working it as a farm?
Yep.
Right, does he still have cattle at that time, do you know?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember in the timeline when the cattle went away. I want to say he did not, because they're not in the video, because they're in the dairy barn here, where all of the cattle usually were, down in the lower level, and they're not in the video. So he might not have had them at that time. And I think he was, I don't know exactly what year this video was made, but it's kind of later 1990s in Mr. Yunker's sunset years. And I think he may have been retired at that point, because I remember his last harvest was 96 or 97, I want to say. And the gentleman who gave me the video could tell us for sure if he's watching.
So share that. How did you get this video?
So it's an interesting story. This video was given to me by a gentleman by the name of Brian Yunker, who is Eddie and Laverne Yunker's grandson. They had their sons, Lee and Ron, and Brian's dad was Ron Yunker. And Brian Yunker is a buddy of mine, and every so often we powwow about Mokena or talking about his grandparents or stuff like that. He's a very generous guy. He has shared a lot of great stories and a lot of great things with me, photos, etc., etc. And he had made this video of his grandpa and just had it around. And out of the kindness of his heart, he shared it with me because he knew I'd be interested in it. Yeah. And he specifically requested that we get it up on YouTube for people to see. So,
well, that is awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to all the Yunker family.
They're very invested in their grandparents' and great-grandparents' legacy, which I think is really, really cool, because a lot of families with roots in Mokena don't have that.
It's a lot of questions that maybe you and I wouldn't think to ask, about harvesting crops and different things related to the farm that he answered that I thought were really, really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Brian asked him a lot of really good questions. And as I was sitting there watching the video for the first time, I was just like over the moon because I was like, that's exactly what I would have asked him. But like you said, there were a lot of things I wouldn't have thought to ask him.
Yeah.
So this is really just a priceless historic artifact, if you want to call it that, of Mr. Yunker. I don't know of any other videos of him like this one.
Well, this is really a treasure, and I've said it a number of times as we've done the podcast and got to meet different people, and different things have come up and come to our attention like this, and it is so cool to be able to share them to the community, to be able to actually walk around the farm with Eddie Yunker.
Yeah,
it's the closest a lot of us will ever get to meeting him and hearing his story. So
right.
Thank you to Brian Yunker.
Thanks, Brian. Absolutely.
Really appreciate you allowing us to post this, and hope you enjoy this video.
My dad and mother?
Yeah.
Well, they bought the farm in 1924.
They grew up originally in Orland Park?
Well, they originated from Orland Park. That's where the Yunkers first came to America.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, they're just north of 159th, between 159th and 143rd on the west side of Wolf Road up there.
So they have a farm up there then?
Well, they had a farm, but now it's all subdivided.
Right.
My dad was born on a log cabin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? I didn't know that.
And,
Where was that?
Well, Silo
On
Ridge.
that farm? By the Silo Ridge?
Yeah, that was the Yunker farm.
Oh,
And,
I didn't.
So now how many brothers and sisters did he have?
there was 15 in the family.
15?
Yeah, but Grandpa Yunker was married twice. And when my dad was born, he was his mother died 3 days after he was born, so he was raised on goat's milk. And then afterward, Grandpa Yunker married a sister that wasn't married. So that was then there were 5 children from the second wife. And
So he was a pretty big guy, wasn't he?
yeah, well, he had a brother, 6'9", weighed 240 pounds. You never know he was a big man until he stood around the rest of them that was 6 foot tall. His head was, their head was up to his shoulders. His head was above all the rest.
Oh, really?
When he went in the house, he always had a duck because the door frames were only 6'8", and he'd bump his head a little way. So when he got married, he went out to Nebraska, and he married a lady. I think she was about 5'10". Anyhow, she was small according to him.
Small according to him.
And then they were sitting in the church the first time, and the preacher says, "Mister, would you please get off the seat?" And everybody looked around, and nobody moved. And he says, he preached a little while. He said, "Mister, would you please get off the seat?" And he knew who he was talking about, but he didn't move. And finally, he walked down here, aisle, and grabbed him by the shoulder, his shirt or suit, and said, "Would you please get off?" My uncle says, "Where should I sit?" "Oh my God, you're the biggest man I ever seen." He says, "No, you made enough issue out of it."
God. So your dad's brothers and sisters are all over?
Well, most of them was in Mokena, Tinley Park, Orland area.
Oh, really?
Well, one or two was lived in Chicago afterwards. He got married and lived in Chicago.
What about Wisconsin? Because we ran into that guy who...
There's a lot of Yunkers up in Wisconsin, too, I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, some of the Yunkers are some by Piedmont, and I don't know if there's any relation, but they're Y-O-U-N-K-E-R. And all I know is what my parents said, that Yunkers, New York, they were, that spelled Y-O-U-N-K-E-R, and he didn't know if there was any relation or not.
Yeah. So then your mother, now where was she from?
Well, her folks came from Germany, and I think she was born born in this country. She was a Koppel. And Koppels was one of the first settlers in Frankfurt.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they settled there, and then the Indians, the winter, drove them back to Indiana. They killed a lot of the whites there. And then the next year they moved back into Frankfurt again, and of course the Indians retreated. And then, well, my mother's folks, they went to Missouri, and then her mother died down there. Then the father came back to Mokena again, and then her dad died when she was about 11 years old. So then the uncles and aunts, there was 2 brothers and 3 sisters. Each one of the aunts and uncles took one of the children and raised them. And so my mother was in Mokena all her life after that.
Wow. Now, what about Grandma's parents?
Well, I can't. They came from Germany too, but I don't know if Grandpa. Well, her Grandma, she was a shop, and her dad was a minister in our church, United Church. He's the one that planted a lot of the evergreens in Mokena area, and over there where Willowcrest School is in our cemetery. He owned 40 acres there, and he was a minister. I don't know if he retired or anyhow he died afterwards. And Crop, well, they were homesteaded too. I don't know if they came to Mokena first but they owned a lot of land, and he was a cattle buyer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, right over here on Route 6, where, and Wolf Road went together with that subdivision there. He owned that farm. That was 160 some acres for years. And then Uncle Roy got it, inherited it, and then they sold it to the man who subdivided. And Laverne great-grandpa ran a meat market in Mokena, and he sold steak for 3 cents a pound. Because we run into his old ledger book there, and I don't know what hamburger was, but I mean...
You still have it, or?
No, I don't know what happened to Laverne. They had it running across when they tore the house down, and I don't think we got it anymore. I don't know if Melvin's got it or not. But
That doesn't make a cow worth very much, does it?
no, well, buy one for $5, $6.
I guess so.
Wow.
When you bought your first herd, how much did those cows cost?
Well,
That farm is on the corner of what, 45 and 143rd?
yeah.
I think you pointed that out to me once, where you got your first herd of cows.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was I bought them from Henry Yunker. He was a cattle dealer up there, and that was well, my dad was an uncle to him, and I paid $85 for some, up to $100
For each one?
Yeah, cow that was ready to make milk.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I quit farming, my day-old calf was worth $125. And that was just a bit. Wow. And then the cattle, well, when I sold out, a lot of them brought $700, $900, $1,100 on the sale.
So you were born in 1918, right?
Yep.
And you didn't have any brothers or sisters, I know.
No, I never had any brothers and sisters. I was just lucky to be here, I guess.
Well, your parents thought they weren't going to have any children, didn't they?
What?
I said your parents thought they weren't going to have any children.
Well, my mother was, my dad got married in he was 44 years old. I came along in 49. 5 years later, I was born.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my dad was 49 when I was born. And my mother was 9 years younger than my dad always. And
So she was 40.
then we was over there for Thanksgiving, and Ron and Lee were playing on the floor. I don't know if they were 5 and 7 or so, and they got in a fight. So I was going to separate. My dad said, "Oh, let them fight." He said, "I never thought I'd see my grandchildren." He He said, at the age when I got married, and he says, you'll see your grandchildren by the time you're 44. And that was it. So,
Jeez.
and he says, you're just lucky you're here, that's all. Well, that was a change in life, baby. That's what my mother told her.
You were born right after World War I and right before the Depression, in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah, I was born in 1918. And so,
Wow. So now, where did you guys live originally? Was it the farm down the road?
well, I was born where Mansky was.
Right.
Lived there. And then my dad bought the farm in 1924, and we moved down there. Well, we moved in the winter in 24. He bought it in the spring. They remodeled the house and built the barn. And then about October when we moved down there.
Wow.
And then, of course, when I got married in 1940, then I went up there and rented the farm for 8 years.
So did your dad put you to work right away on the farm, or I mean, you were obviously helping out all the time.
That's why?
You were helping out on his farm because he was a farmer.
Yeah. So,
And then he had a lot. Did he have a dairy farm? He had a dairy farm.
oh, yeah. And my dad was a horse dealer. He bought and sold horses and had 3 stallions. He traveled a stallion. He had 3 men working for him, traveled a stallion in the spring, breed a neighbor's horses for him.
What kind of horses did he have?
Well, he had a Hackney and a Belgian and a Persian, but he preferred the Persian. The Hackney was a driving horse. They were a little lighter, similar to a quarter horse, only a little more ranky, a little longer legs and traveled pretty fast. They were a good saddle horse too,
Wow.
but quarter horse was a better roping horse because he had shorter legs and down closer. He could brace himself better than a taller horse. But, well, Coltman was born, and he stood 3 days. And he got $20 colt. And he go around. They breed the horses in the spring for 3 months, and then afterwards they didn't. They always want the colts born in the spring, kind of. But sometimes they bred them later in the summer to get. And then he bought and sold horses. Had a hired man work for him, and he says, "I like to work for you, Dad." And he says, "Sometimes I never harness the same horse twice." In the springtime, farmers start field work. They needed horses. They come up there and they buy horses and he sell them. And then at in the end of the day, they only had maybe 1 horse left yet. Yeah. And my dad said, "Don't worry, I'll go out and buy some." So he'd go out and buy some colts out there, Frankfurt, or almost down to Kankakee, Pierre, come home with a bunch of colts, and they had to break them. They always got the crop in anyhow, but I mean, it was a business.
And so then you went to school the whole time, Mokena.
Yeah, I didn't have no kindergarten there, but 8 grades, and then we had 2-year high school. That's all as far as I went.
What time did kids go when they were 5 or 6, or when they were older?
Well, you had to be, let's see, you had to be 5 before September the 1st. So or 6 maybe, because I was, my birthday was in March, so I was all right. But if you were born after September the 1st, then you'd be finished 7 before you started.
Wow. So where'd you go? What was school like then? I mean, in the summer, you didn't go in the summer, obviously. In the winter?
Well, we walked to school and went through the snowbanks. We rode the bobsleds, or people that hauled milk to town. We'd get a ride. They'd give us a ride in the neighbor. And the drinking fountain used to be froze up in the school, and about the 1st of November to March, we had a pump outside. You'd pump it and catch it with a tin cup if you wanted a drink. And they had outside toilets. You didn't have no inside plumbing, and pot-belly stove in each room.
Wow.
How many kids in a classroom?
Huh?
How many kids in a classroom?
Well, up to 35. But there was maybe 3 grades in one room. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th. 7th and 8th, and then high school was 1st and 2nd. And,
Where was the school?
right at the corner of Mokena Street and Schoolhouse Road, where that yellow house was. That was it.
Oh,
I don't know when I was in 3rd grade. I think 3rd grade, and we went over to Carpenter Street School. That was a new school. Mokena was the first
that's
one that
where
had
you
a
went to
gym,
kindergarten.
which is a village hall now.
Uh-huh.
So were all the girls chasing after you?
No. Throw snowballs at them, wash their face.
I got screwed up at work, so you guys have a happy Easter.
Yeah, you too. Nice to
Take it
meet
easy,
you.
Gary.
Okay, all right, we'll talk to you. Thanks for stopping, Gary.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, you never caused any trouble though, did you?
no, I never got in much trouble.
Well, what about you and Dick Sipple? I think you told me a few stories about you and Dick kind of got into some
Yeah,
little
I don't
tricks.
know, we were quite a few things. I can't remember them all.
What did you do? Did you used to go out and get wood for the teacher? For the stove in the school?
Oh, well, the janitor would carry in 5 or 6 coal buckets, And then I was one of the biggest boys there, so the teacher would say, well, the furnace needs some coal, and you're supposed to open the damper in the back before you open the door in the front, because that kept some of the heat from going out, Sometimes you forget and you open the door and throw half a bucket of coal in there, and a big cloud of smoke can come up out of there, and she say, Edwin, you forgot to open the drafts.
Did she send you out back for some wood? Did they ever have a wood burning stove there?
No, we always, when I went, it was all coal burning.
Oh, I see.
Wood, coal house out there that held, ice. And the janitor every morning he'd fill 4 or 5 coal buckets for each room, and that's kept it going. And then at night, and he'd put some coal in. I don't know if it went out till the next morning.
Oh, I see. Uh-huh.
But the girls all set up close to the furnace, and the boys were back powder. We always had heavier clothes on. And them days you went to school with long underwear.
Oh, I suppose. Uh-huh.
So now, did Grandma go to the same school as you did?
Huh?
Did Grandma go to the same school as you
Yeah,
did?
she went right across the street. Her uncle lived right across the street of schoolhouse. And all the girls and boys thought, boy, she was lucky. She only had about 200 feet to walk. But she said, I wasn't so lucky. I wish I would have lived about 2 miles away, because at noon she had to go home there and wash dishes. Because there was 4 brothers in that family, her cousin, and she was the only girl, and she had to do a lot of housework, where the rest they ate at school, and they had an hour between the morning school and start at 1 o'clock again. But she said I was glad it was at home, so she didn't mind it.
Because I know Grandma had kind of a rough childhood, didn't she?
Huh?
Grandma had kind of a rough childhood, didn't she?
Oh, yeah, well, she's alone in the world after 11 years old, except for 2 brothers and 2 sisters. So she,
Oh, that was your mother.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
well, you mean
Grandma's.
Yeah. Well, they always had plenty to eat, but they had to work.
Yeah.
And then her sister died, and then Rich Hensel married her older sister, died when Dolly was born. So then she kept house for Richard Hensel for about 1.5 years or 2. Then he got married again. Well, then he got my mother a job at the fair store in Chicago in the cosmetic department. She worked there for quite a few years, and then she finally gave that up and worked for Sipple.
why did she get a job in the cosmetic department? I wouldn't think that she used a lot of makeup.
No, she didn't use hardly any makeup. She had a good complexion. She believed in ivory soap, washed her face 3 times a day, and she probably used a little lipstick and maybe a little rouge, but everybody always said that she was in the cosmetic department, and "Oh, you got a lovely skin." My mom says, "Yeah," and then she didn't. If they asked her too much, she'd tell them, but otherwise she's supposed to sell cosmetics.
Everyone's supposed to want to look like her.
I can remember.
She got up at 5 o'clock.
I can remember my mother working in the garden or so. 10 o'clock, and she'd come back in and get dinner ready, and first thing she'd wash her face with soap and water, ivory soap, and she always had a nice skin. But she maybe was more fortunate than some people.
Well, it might have been that she spent so much time outside too. She was.
But
healthy.
then in the summertime, when the sun got real hot, she didn't want to get brown like the girls did today. She had a short sleeve dress, but she put on stockings on her arm there, and she had a bonnet that had a hood on, so she didn't want to get brown. She wanted to be more light complected, And today, this is the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you went to Chicago, they said, "Oh boy, you was a farmer's wife." This way, they thought you were growing up in the city.
So now, how'd you get the farm that you're at now?
Well, my dad bought it on a public auction. It was so.
Now there were none of the buildings there, though, right? It was just the land.
Well, there were buildings there. My dad tore them down and remodeled them all except the one wing in the house. He tore 13 rooms off the west side and added that wing towards the. And the barn was running east, north, and south, and he took it all apart and turned it around and made it running east and west because he wanted the driveway towards the road. He didn't want a west side driveway because of cold weather. And then they tore the court crib down was where the pig house was, and then he built that over there where it is now, and he built the pig house there the next year. And of course, there's an ice house there, twice as big as our garage, where McGovney's used to cut ice out of Hickory Creek in the wintertime and put it up there, and they put straw or sawdust and pile it full of ice, and they sold it to the people in town, the tavern, and the houses. They had those wood ice boxes where you put a big chunk of ice in.
Where was the ice house?
Just right where the two-car garage set. Oh, it was 2 stories. That was a big building there.
How long did it last, the ice?
Well, the ice would last winter till next winter.
That long?
Yeah, because it was big. And the straw, it melted smaller, but they cut it about, well, it depends how, they waited till the ice was, the way Dick told me, it was about a foot thick in the creek. And then they saw it in chunks 4 feet by 8 feet long, and they pull it out with a team of horses on the sled, and then they pull it over by the ice house, and they had it just like a hay rope there, like they pull up bale of hay. They pull the ice chunk up there, and then they slid it along, put 6 inches of straw, and the next layer the other way.
Wow.
And then when they wanted it, they cut it in 50-pound chunks or so and slide it down in a wagon and haul it to town.
Wow. Now, what was it like raising a barn then, when you had the barn building parties?
Oh, I was not too old, but I can remember it. The carpenters my dad took it down, him and the 2 hired men, and put all the nails out and that. And then the carpenters came there. The old barn was 40 by 80. The new one was 66 by 36. And the big sills are good and the boards are good. So they'd work about a week or 2 weeks, 3 men or so there. And they'd have everything put together on the ground. And then they'd have a barn raising crew come. All the farmers came and the women, they made dinner there. They'd start about 8 o'clock in the morning. And they have all the pieces marked, chiseled out, so everything fit. And then they had ropes and poles, and the men would push it up, and some would hold the ropes, and then they put it together. The first section or 2 was kind of wobbly, and then after they got all up, then they put the sides on, and by night they had the rafters on, and half of the roof boards are better, and then everybody went home. Then the carpenters would say, well, you think it's going to rain Saturday night? This may have been Wednesday or Tuesday or sometime during generally they started on a Monday as a rule, but not always.
What time of year did they do it? What time of year did they?
Well, this was in the about. My dad took it apart in March, so they poured the concrete
Before they
walls
get
and
it
that.
out.
So it probably went up in June sometime there, and then they'd have a barn dance. Sometimes they didn't have the roof completed yet. The moon would shine in, and then they'd have beer, and they'd have some guy play accordion, and then they'd dance. And women brought stuff to eat, and they'd go home, and they not the one that built our barn, but my dad helped when he was younger building barns for old Adam Berenson down, and he used to like to drink. So by midnight, he was sometimes pretty well under the weather, and he'd be sleeping there till about 4 o'clock in the morning when the rest went home to wake up and go home. that was a big deal. But everybody, whoever raised the barn, and the neighbors, they'd help you or you help them, and it didn't cost too much.
Did you go to any barn racings? Do any other barn racings in the area?
I only helped raise one barn in my life, and that was Charlie Guyder's up there, which is tore down now.
Oh, the one on Route 45?
No, well, just north of 45, or east of 45. It was about where,
St. Francis Road is?
no, right across from that big, that white building where they have dances, wedding reception right across the street.
Oh, just up by the.
Oh, I know. Okay. Okay.
And I helped raise that barn, and I was married then about 2 years, and Charlie Guyder, and that's the only one I ever helped raise.
So now, how'd you meet Grandma?
Huh?
You said how'd you meet Grandma?
Well, we went to school together. She was a year behind me, but then she used to roller skate down Wolf Road. And,
You throw snowballs at her? Was that it?
well,
No.
I don't know, but caught my eye. And them days you'd ride the girl on a bicycle, not on the handlebars, but our bikes were a little different. And finally got acquainted. And,
Now, how old were you when you met her?
probably 8th grade.
Okay.
I mean, I rode her on the bike in 8th grade. I never went to a roller skater. She was a good roller skater. I was a good ice skater. And, of course, sometimes we'd have a sleet storm in Wolf Road then, and it'd be a quarter of an inch of ice. We'd skate right down the highway. And,
Wow.
and they didn't put salt on them days that the sun had to take it off.
Yeah.
And,
So now, how old were you when you got married?
I was 22, she was 21. We dated for 4 or 5 years or better. Not
Wow.
regular, but the last year is pretty regular. The first year, once in a while, I'd take her to a show or someplace. And then, of course, we had young people's league in church, and that's where everybody got in there, young people, and they played in music chairs and different games. And,
So you never caught the eye of any other women?
well, I dated some other ones too, but I mean,
Which other ones were those?
but I liked her the best, and I guess she finally liked me the best.
Oh, it took her a while?
Oh, I shouldn't tell you this, but we dated a year or two off and on, and then finally she said, "Well, I want to go out with some other people." I said, "Well, go ahead. It don't make any difference." So then I dated a couple of girls, but I guess she thought maybe she was going to lose out, and then we got together and we kind of stayed together.
Well, which other ones did you date?
Yeah.
I said, which other ones did you date?
Oh, I can't name them all.
Any ones that come to your mind in particular?
No, well, I only dated this nurse twice. When I was in the hospital, of course, I had a 1935 car, a new car, and that kind of, the gal kind of liked that too. But I was in there for double hernia operation, and me and Clifford Platt, and well, I was 12 days in the hospital. And in the afternoon, you always got dessert. You either had a milkshake or a dish of ice cream or some kind of pudding. And we were right next to the nurse's office or headquarters, and they'd go down the line, and then later on they'd pay. We always ate what they gave us, and then they come back. Some people didn't touch it, you know, and they'd say, "You want another dish of ice cream or a milkshake?" Or so we'd always get an extra handout. And the kid next to me, he said, "I don't know if we should eat that stuff." He says, "Some sick people down the line are sicker than we are, and then we're eating." The nurse says, "They never touch it. If you want it, okay, otherwise we have to dump it out." So we always got a little extra. And it seemed like just we're the two youngest guys in there, and they sat on the bed and talked to us before they sometimes. And one day I says to Clifford Platt, I says, "This girl was from Ottawa." I said, "You know, the next time she comes and sits on the bed, I'm going to put my arm around her and kiss her." He said, "I bet you won't." So I did. And she says, "Hey," he says, "you're not supposed to do that." Well, I said, "I just kind of like you." And he laughed over there. So,
How many milkshakes did you get that day?
I don't think any more. And he says, and they got off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and just before got off, they only checked our blood pressure or so, you know, and then they filled out the paper. "Well, we'll see you tomorrow morning." So, we got along pretty good. And one day, she reached over, you know, she had a brow on, you know, and I could see her, but I stuck my hand in between her. And she says, "Listen, you're going to get in trouble." I said, "Well, I just thought it fell out of the hanger. I was going to put it back in the hanger." And he said, "Boy, you got more crust." He said, "Next day she'll shove the needle in you," but she never did. But anyhow, when we got home, she said, "You know, you got to take a..." Well, then Clifford Platt had another nurse, and he got pretty friendly with her, but he went home about 3 days before I did, and she says, "You two guys are going to take us to the dance one of these times." So, okay, so.
And did you know Grandma then, huh?
Huh?
Oh, you knew Grandma then.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
So anyhow, she called up one day to my mother and says, "Is Edwin there?" And, you know, well, they lived in Ottawa, both of them, so they had a big dance down there. So, and I talked to him, and she says, "Are you going to take us out for a dance? There's a big dance down there." I said, "Well, okay." Well, she says, "You pick us up about 7 o'clock because then my folks will have to come and get us, you know." So I said, "Well, I got to get a hold of Clifford Platt." Well, she says, I don't know, her name was Irene. She couldn't get a hold of him, so I got a hold of him. And so we picked them up and went to the dance. And then their parents were out there dancing too. And then we had to go back to her house. And her name was Arbiter, her last name. And then they had coffee cake, and we left about 1 o'clock and went home. And then one other time, she called up, and I said, "Well, I tell you, I'm going pretty steady with a girl." I said, and I said, "You're too far away anyhow. That's drive." So it was about 2 years later, our hired man was in the hospital for appendicitis operation. And she was still a nurse there, and Laverne was along. I was married then, and she happened to look down the hall. She said, "Eddie, how are you?" I said, "Okay." I said, "Laverne, I dated this girl. I took her to a dance. She was our nurse." "Oh," she said, "yeah." He says, "He was a pretty good patient." That's all she says. I never told my wife what I
Are you sweating?
You weren't sweating any, were you?
Huh?
You weren't sweating any, were you? So now, when did Uncle Lee come around? When was Uncle Lee born?
Well, he was born in 1941. We got married in 40. He was born in 41 and almost 42 in December. No, he was born in October.
Mm-hmm.
We were married a year and a half or so.
Well, how'd you figure out when Lee's birthday was going to be? Remember, you told us how.
I know. New Year's Eve. We thought we'd want to have a child, so we did. I put it down on the calendar, October the 15th, and that's the day it was born.
That's the cow calendar, right, though?
Yeah, well, 9 months. The calves take 9 months too. So she went over the hedges about 2 months before he examined her, and he says, well, I said, well, she'll be born October the 15th. He says, I don't think so. He says, the first one comes anytime. He says, like that. By God, he was October the 15th.
Well, you were there. The doctor wasn't. So.
Well, why Hedges says the first one comes anytime. Sometimes the girls are pregnant before they're married, so.
There you go.
But he said the second one always takes 9 months.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Anyhow,
So now, what was Uncle Lee like when he was young?
he was a good boy. I mean, I can't say anything wrong with him.
Oh, I know that.
When we brought him home, Melvin was there, and I guess he was hungry, and my mother was there, and my dad, and it was quite an event bringing a child home, and he was crying, and finally Uncle Melvin said to Laverne, is that all that kid can do is bawl? He said, well, then afterward we found out he was hungry. I don't know what after that.
So now, Uncle Lee was, what, 4 when my dad was born, right?
What?
Uncle Lee was 4 or so when my dad was born?
Your dad was born in 1944. I think there's 3 years different, ain't it? 2 years, 41?
2.5 or 3,
Something
maybe.
like that.
Yeah, I think it was a little closer than 4 years. Probably 4 years in school.
So,
what were they like growing up?
they were active kids. I mean.
Yeah.
Well, when we decided we wanted one more child, and Laverne said, I hope it's a girl. The first one we wanted was a boy. Well, anyhow, Doc Hedges delivered Lee, and Doc McMahon delivered Ron, because Doc McMahon was Laverne's family doctor, and Doc Hedges was our family doctor, so that was just a difference. And so, anyhow, when Ron was born, Laverne says it's a girl, and Doc McMahon says it's a boy. Well, he's healthy, so that was it. And, but when
She always says she cried when she found out that Ron was a boy, because she thought she was going to have a girl.
yeah, she was happy long as healthy. But when Lee was born right away, she said, "What is it?" Doc said, "It's a boy." "You sure?" Doc Hedges says, "God damn it, if I know what a boy looks like, it's a boy." He swore a little bit. He was a good doctor, but he had short patience. He didn't talk. It was strictly business. I mean, if you asked him questions, he'd answer it, but otherwise he didn't have. He was too busy all the time. He was on the go all the time. Mm-hmm. My mother didn't like him too well, but she liked him. But you couldn't get nothing out of him unless you asked the questions. When he's in there and out, and by the time you thought of something, he was gone. I was sick there, and I had infected gland when I was in high school, and I was stuck out farther in my neck. He came every day after the hospital in the morning, about 9 o'clock, he'd give me a shot in the vein, and about 2 minutes later, I could taste it in my mouth. And about the 5th day, he says to my mother, he says, you know, I had a boy like that, I lost him. But he says, this one I'm going to save. And, you know, from that day on, I got better all the time. I guess he scared me to death.
Well, what medicine did they give you? Do you know? They didn't have penicillin then, did they?
I don't know what they had. No, penicillin came in World War II when they first but it was something they put in the vein, and by God, you could taste it in your mouth, you know. And every day for 5 days, he gave me that shot right in the vein. And of course, I could be up and around. I wasn't laying in bed. I'd lay down a while, but
Is that where you lost your hearing?
no. But this infected gland stuck out me, and then afterwards, it finally went down, and I had to go over and get violet ray put on, and it was something like, well, it'd make it real. Your skin was real suntan, but it took the swelling out and finally got down to where I could go back to school. I was sick for about 2 weeks, so.
So now Ron and Lee played a lot of sports when they were young, didn't they? Ron and Lee played a lot of sports when they were young.
Oh yeah, they grew up in baseball, and Ron was a better baseball player than Lee was. Lee was a longer ball hitter, but Ron was a good pitcher and a good baseball player, and they played. Ron played football. Lee played 1 year of football, and he didn't care too much for it in high school. And Ron played 4 years football, basketball, and baseball. He won a letter every year, from freshman up to varsity. And he had the highest scoring record for one game in Lincoln Way High School till about 10 years ago. Somebody beat him.
Was that for basketball?
For basketball, and he was quite a pitcher. He had a lot of speed, and he'd have been better off if he didn't play football last year. That kind of hurt his baseball career, but he had his shoulder dislocated. And then when he got into college, he pitched 4 or 5 innings, and his arm was sore. He couldn't stand it, so finally he quit baseball there. But in the summertime, he played with the Will County Athletics. That was the best ball players in the Joliet area, all the way from Ottawa. And they went out to Kansas City and pitched in the park there where the Kansas City Royals are. He pitched 3 innings there. And then, he was a relief pitcher there. That's all he pitched. But then his arm would get so sore. The last year of football was when he got dislocated shoulder. But when he was pitching for the Will County Athletics, and I don't know where they were playing, someplace in Illinois, and he threw the ball so hard that the catcher missed it. It hit the umpire in the mast, and it split the bars.
Oh my God. Wow.
He had a lot of speed, and he was a good fielder, too. But he wasn't, well, he had a couple home runs. He wasn't a long ball hitter. And of course, pitchers are the rule don't play. Well, and he played third base at Lincoln Way when he wasn't pitching sometime. But in Little League, heck, he'd strike up more out than they hit. Played Tinley Park, Orland, and Frankfurt, and when Ron pitched, they always won the game.
My Uncle Lee was a little different. He would sit around and build models, and
yeah,
he was a little more patient, maybe.
He could sit down and work on an airplane a whole week and glue them together. He had these little gas airplanes that flew on strings, and Ron would sit a while, but he had to get his baseball glove out, or otherwise he'd ride his pony up to Mansky's. They lived up there where Mansky's lived there where I was born, and that's where they were born. And he always was on the go. He couldn't sit too long.
That never changed.
No. He was always happy when he was doing something.
Yeah.
Well, he was ambitious too, but he could sit and work on things like that. And of course, he always kept his wheels spinning. He was always thinking. We used to have a big freezer in the basement. We had ice cream down there, and I'd always say, "Who wants to get the ice cream?" Well, Ron would run down and get it right away. And then the other one would have to Lee'd have to take it down if we didn't use it all, you know. So one day Laverne asked him and says, "How come you don't want to go down and get it?" Well, he says, "Sometimes the carton's empty, so I don't have to take it down." And that's the way it was. If I was working on some implement and I wanted a wrench, if I addressed Ron, you get it, or Lee, get it, they'd know, they'd run off and get it. But I'd say, "Well, I need a pipe wrench, or I need a crescent wrench." Ron would be off like a shot, and Lee wouldn't. So I knew right away that I'd have to, if I addressed who to get it, there was no trouble. But Lee always figured, well, if Ron wants to run, let him run.
Gee, so now when did Ado come?
Well, he came in the last year. Lee was in. Well, he was in high school, I think, yeah, he was in high school last year. Then Ado came, and Ron was a year. Ado was in between Ron and Lee, so he came in middle of August. So he was here the whole school term till spring, and then he went back to Italy again.
Yeah.
How did you decide to have an exchange student, or how did you?
How did what?
How did you decide to have Ado come stay with you?
Well, years ago, since Lincoln Way started, they had always foreign exchange students. One from Lincoln Way would go over to Europe, and one from Europe would come over there. So they picked. They had a girl before that, Hannah from Holland, and then the next time they'd have a boy. Well, then we had two boys in high school, and they asked Laverne if she would be happy to have a foreign exchange student. And she said, "Well, our house ain't real modern or anything, no, but you got two sons in Lincoln Way, and that's good companionship for them." Mm-hmm. So there was a group of ladies and men that voted on who they'd give it to. There were 4 or 5 families would accept it, and they picked Laverne, our family, and of course we had a farm family, and most of them were came to people that were in town. Mm-hmm. So then he came over, and he was there about 2 months, and one morning, Saturday morning, he was Laverne could see that something was bothering him, and she said to him, "What's wrong with you?" He said, she said, "I think you're homesick." He said, "Yeah, I am." So she said, "Well, we'll try and get a telephone call over to you on Saturday," and this was during the week, or maybe it was Saturday, I don't know. So he happened to know their telephone number over there. So then they got through and they talked to his parents. And after that, he felt better. He wasn't homesick. And Laverne always said, "You're just like another son of mine." But that bill was $28.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's not cheap, I'm sure.
He talked about an hour there.
Wow.
His mother would say, "Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye." Yeah, yeah. The dad would come in with another question, you know. But then it was well worth it. And we wasn't supposed to give him any spending money, you know. And then he got a job at the school on Saturdays. Well, little maintenance to give him, but we always gave him $5 or $10 besides for spending money. And of course, we were responsible for him. He wasn't asked to drive a car or a tractor while he was here. Well, he drove a tractor. He sat on my lap, but I mean, just to have the feel of it. And of course, we were always strict with our kids. 12 o'clock at night, they had to be home when they were on a date or so. And Ado wasn't used to that. His parents didn't care. And one day he was dating that Sherwood girl, and it was 12 o'clock. Ado wasn't home. Laverne gets on the phone, calls up Sherwood, and got Ron out. Says, "You're supposed to be home at 12 o'clock. Yeah. She says, "Ron's coming up to get you in 5 minutes, so you'll be ready." So after that, Ado was always Well, we always told them they couldn't make it at home. At that time, they should call up, not drive 100 miles an hour and get in a wreck. But that was the way. And Lee one night stayed at Marie's. It was kind of late. It was about 12 o'clock, and nobody. Laverne gets on the phone, gets a hold of Marie, and says, "Is Lee there?" She says, "Yeah, well, he's supposed to be home at 12 o'clock. Well, he'll be ready to go." Lee always says, "I could always see Ma peeking out of the kitchen window. Anytime when she seen I was home, she'd go back to bed, and I could see that curtain. When I went to bed, I didn't worry about it. But then, like they had a prom or something, just let them 1:30 or so. But 12 o'clock was supposed to be home, and they were always. Well, Lee ran out of gas one night. And, it was about it. There were 2 convertibles. Ron had one and Lee had one. And every time I'd try to get Lee's to go someplace, sometimes Laverne was, that year was working at the school and I got it. It was always something on E. I'd always have to put a can of gas in. We had a gas barrel, an 8-gallon milk can. And I could get in Ron's car and go to Piedmont or Mokena. It was always half full or so. So that night at the supper table, I was kind of keyed off a little, and I says, "Lee," I says, "by God, I buy the gas, it's free, and if you're too damn lazy to put it in, every time I want to use it, it's empty." And I said, "If you ever run out of gas, don't call me." So I don't think it was 10 days. One night he calls up about 11 o'clock, he got Laverne, and he said, "Tell Dad to bring me some gas. I'm at the Cemetery Hill on Wolf Road there, and I'm out of gas." And Laverne wakes me up and says, "Your son's out of gas. Where is he?" "Down there by the Cemetery Hill." She said, "Now don't bawl him out." Thank God he could walk home. But I put some gas in, and I didn't say a word. I said, "Lee, raise the hood up, poured it in the carburetor. I had 2-gallon gas tank, poured it in the gas. And I said, "See if it starts." It started, so I jumped in the pickup truck. I run it in the shed, and Laverne was up. And she says, "Is he coming?" I said, "Yeah." I didn't say a word. I went to bed, and Lee come in, and she says, "Did Dad bawl you out?" He never said a word. He didn't say yes or no. He just...
That was probably worse.
He never run out of gas after that. But it was, he was married quite a few years. He got talking. He said, "Yeah, Dad, I can remember when I run out of gas." "Yeah, I said I could do." He said, "I was all set to get balled out, and you never said a word. That hurt more than balling me out."
Yeah. Now, the 3 of them got in a little trouble, didn't they? They were always a little wrestling around and stuff. Leonardo and Ron?
They'd wrestle. Ado was supposed to be a wrestler, but Ron and Ado, Lee was stronger. Ado couldn't handle him. But anyhow, they'd be on the floor. They'd be wrestling in the dining room, or to be in bed. I was supposed to be referee. So one night I says, "Ado, who's the winner? The guy laying down? No, the guy on top." John Krapp was there during football practice before school started, and they were down there in the dining room. That's before we remodeled. They were throwing a football back and forth, and they knocked the floor lamp over and broke the bowl. And it was quite a commotion. Boy, Laverne was upstairs sleeping. She came down. She really raised heck with her. And after that,
I heard about that. They were passing the football.
That was part of growing up.
They used to have pancake eating contest, didn't they?
Huh?
They used to have pancake eating contest too. Was that?
Well,
At Mokena.
No, French toast.
French toast.
Oh, French toast. Yeah, I don't know. Ado and Ron would eat. I don't know who won out, but they'd eat 8, 10, 12 pieces of toast.
Jeez. So no, Ado never, enticed any women, did he? While he was here?
Well, he dated the girls in high school.
I heard he was pretty popular.
Well, but he had certain ones he liked and he didn't. The Sherwood girl was one of his main ones, and then there was somebody else. her dad run the grocery store in New Lenox. There was two daughters. I can't remember what the name was anymore. Well, they took Ado to some stuff, big doings in Chicago sometimes on Saturday night, musical and
Oh, I see.
some theater things. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what you call them. Special events, and then other people took them out too. Jim Cogan was good. He was a teacher, and D'Amico, he was one of the sponsors, and he was Italian, and of course, and we took Ado to the International Speedway. He went with Lee and Ron that time, and of course, I think Lee was in first year of college.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but they went 2 years in a row. Then that 1 year they had Gubb, and then that other fellow was a good friend of Lee's.
They went to Indianapolis?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Bettenhausen's, was that it?
Who?
Bettenhausen's?
Yeah, well, Bettenhausen was racing. They went there. They'd sat in their squad in his racing car, you know. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, Tony, he was a good friend of mine, and they grew up, and of course, then he got killed a couple of years later. Trial racing for a friend of his that was in the race. He couldn't get enough speed out of it, so they put Tony in there so he could qualify. And there was a bolt fell out of the steering wheel, and he hit the wall and killed himself. 10-cent bolt, they claim.
Man.
God.
Tony raced in the midgets for years. I mean, at the amphitheater in Chicago. Then he went in the big races afterwards. He was in there for 8-10 years before he got killed. The best he ever got was second place. Most of the time his car would clunk out before he finished the 500 miles. He was coming home from Indiana to make a television one night, or one after. Well, it was that night, but he was coming home from Indianapolis. He was down there trial racing, and he was a Chrysler dealer. His brother was in the Chrysler business, and he was a little late, so he was coming down, I don't know what road it was in Indiana, but he's hitting 80, 85 miles an hour. And they put up a roadblock up there, and they stopped him, the state police, and want to see your driver's license. You know, you were hitting 80, 85 miles an hour, and he says, yeah, I was a little late for a TV show I was supposed to be on. Let's see your driver's license. Oh, you're Tony Bettenhausen, the auto racer. He says, yeah, but I'm late for my show. He says, well, we won't give you a ticket, but don't drive that fast. He said, I guess you can handle that speed because you're used to driving 200 miles an hour. But it was only a year after that or so he got killed.
So now both Ron and Lee went to school at Elmhurst?
Yeah. Well, Lee, he had a mindset a year or so before to go to Elmhurst College. And of course, Reverend Reman, he graduated from Elmhurst College years ago, and the Dunham kid, he was a good friend of Dickie Dunham, and he went to Elmhurst. But Ron, he had a baseball scholarship to go to New Mexico, Cooperberry, New Mexico, or skip one, Albuquerque. And he didn't know what he was going to do. And Lee said, why don't you sign up for Elmhurst? And he says, you can always. So it was about 3 weeks before he had to know which way he was going. And the guy that interviewed him from Albuquerque, New Mexico, says, you coming? Well, Ron says, give me a day to think. And I said, well, Ron, if you go down there, we won't probably see you till the end of the year. I can't afford to give you a plane ticket for Thanksgiving and Christmas to come home, but maybe Christmas. But I says, otherwise, if you go up here, we can get back and forth every couple of weeks or so. So the next day he called the man up and he says, I'm going to Elmhurst College. And that was it. So, well, he probably wouldn't have did any good because his arm was sore. He probably pitched 1 year down there. And so we'd go up and get the wash every week or every other week. Sometimes they brought the wash down over the weekend, and that was it. And, I guess he was happy that he went to Elmhurst in the end.
Yeah.
So.
Now, what was the story about Uncle Lee hanging somebody out of the window by his ankles?
Yeah, I don't know. Up there they had him and Jim Lehman. They were that floor managers and keep the other student, and they were kind of strict. But anyhow, Jim Lehman, he was a poor housekeeper. They roomed together, and Lee would sweep his half the room, and Lee'd hang up his clothes right away. But Jim Lehman, he was a minister's son, and or coal miner's son, I don't know which one. He wound up being a minister. But he'd have 2 or 3 suits on top of his bed there, and every once in a while, about every other week or so, then he'd finally clean up. But Lee'd sweep this half the room, and Lee always says, boy, Dad and Mom, I'm glad you were strict. When I take my suit off, it's right on the hanger, hangs up right away. And if you don't use it, he says, it's hung up, and if you do it, and so one day, well, they played a few tricks up there. One day, we were bringing Lee's clothes home up there, and I was carrying one of the suitcases, and the kids in the dorm were saying, hi, Lee, hi, Mr. Yunker. Geez, I thought, God, they're awful friendly there, you know. So we get in his room, he had no dresser, everything was moved out in the boy's john, you know. So Lee says, you gonna help me? I says, no, let them guys that hauled it out help you. They all came and laughed. They moved it back in, I guess. So then Lee had an idea who did it. So one day the kid was gone. So they went to work and took their dresser and tipped it upside down and took the drawers out and tipped it upside down. They put the drawers upside down in. So when the kid went in to pull out the drawers, all the clothes fell out of the floor. So one got after the other. So then one day, Jim Lehman, and no, I don't think it was Jim Lehman, it was another kid that came out with Lee. He went in the Navy after he graduated. Cardell.
Oh,
Joe
yeah.
Cardell.
He's the Air Force.
So they had a garbage can half full of water. Yeah, he had it sitting on the door outside, and they rapped on the door, and the kid opened the door, and the can of water run into the room. But the best one was this Bill Sir. He was scared of girls, you know, and so Bill Cardell, he knew a storekeeper down there at Elmhurst, so they got one of these girls dummy, you know, and got it when he was out in the room. They put it in his bed, you know, and he came in with another guy in the room, you know. Of course, the fellow that was in the room knew all about it. So he came there, he took his coat off, he looked. Gee, he said, get that girl out of there. He put her in my bed, you know, and he said, I ain't going to touch her. She might hit me. And he looked at me out of here with a dummy. He went and carried her out and set it up in the wall there.
Jeez.
And the next day, the kids, Bill Cardell took it back to the store. So they had a few tricks among themselves.
My dad played college basketball too, didn't he? He played college basketball?
Yeah, Lee did.
Or Ron?
Yeah, Ron did. He played 2 years. He on a holiday in a tournament. He was the highest scorer, and he was the most valuable player in that tournament.
Wow.
That night, I don't know, what do you make, 40 points or something?
Yeah, it was.
God, he couldn't miss it. Every time he shot, it went in. And then, of course, the next year, well, he lost too much time traveling basketball, and his grades wasn't getting too good. And so he came to his junior year, and he says to Laverne and I, he says, I'm not going out for sports this year. I'm not playing baseball, and my arm hurts. And he never played football up there. He wasn't big enough up there. Well, he could have. He was fast enough, but he didn't care that much. So anyhow, the coach, he was
Skousen.
He kind of peeved, and he wouldn't talk for Ron for about 6 weeks. He made him an offer. He says, God, what your ability? No, Ron says, I'll never make the big teams. And he says, I got to get an education to make my living afterwards. So, but then after a couple months, they talked, but he never was the same man that he was.
Because he was drafted, by the Detroit Tigers, New York Yankees to play?
Well, the Detroit Tigers, they were going to watch him in college, and they wanted to have him try out, but then his arm hurt so much he never.
Yeah, we have the guy's card, the
So,
business card.
I
saved it.
When he played basketball, he wasn't a good scorer, but he was a good center. And they were playing Kenosha, Wisconsin. There was a big colored boy there, and he'd drive in. And he played center, and he'd plow in there. And the coach says to him, "You got to guard him." And he says, "I'll guard him." He said, "What you do? You drop down a little bit, put your shoulder there when he's driving in." So we were at that game that night. Boy, he come driving in, and he put that shoulder on. And he hit the floor and knocked the wind out of him. He laid down there a little bit. And I guess the kid thought he hit a concrete wall. After that, he dribbled around him. He didn't plow through him. So he was captain of the Elmer's basketball team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the last 2 years.
Yeah, one night they were co-captain,
Yeah.
Ron and Lee. I remember that night.
Well, when Ron got up there, this kid that's in Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan,
John Jeffrey?
Jeffries,
Yeah.
and they came out when Lincoln was playing high school. Ron Lee was in college, and they were playing the sectional against Homewood Frostmore. Of course, they lost that night, but they knew Ron was a good player. And so when he got up to college, they were practicing, and there was a guy from Madison, too, I forget. And anyhow, he was a freshman. The first game or so he didn't play, but after that he was on the varsity team, freshman and sophomore year, until he quit. And the coach thought he was a good player, which he was. Mm-hmm. He was quick. He had a quick pair of hands. He'd take the ball away from people. And he wasn't the best dribbler in the world, but he was a good shot. And he always made 20, 22 points for him.
Wow.
But in Lincoln way, he had to feed the ball to Skip, because Skip's dad was the coach, and when he was open, he'd had to pass to him, but otherwise, that would hurt John. The Walfogel boy, Al Walfogel, he too had a tater, but he was a pretty good shot. But Skip was always getting the most points in a row. But Ron was right up there, pretty good. But the last year when they were, Ron, they wasn't ever graduated already. Well, then Ron was more. They had Edwards as coach, and of course they knew that he was a good basketball player. So he was one of the best scorers in Lincoln Way then. Mm-hmm. But that one night they were playing Wilmington, and that was on a sectional playoff. And he said, I think Ronnie made under 40 points. He couldn't miss. He could have made more, but they were so far ahead. He had 3 minutes to play yet, and the coach took him out, put somebody else in. Otherwise, they had another 5, 6 points. And two guys from Wilmington came up and talked to her, and she said, I was talking to somebody else. He said, that's your son? She says, yeah. And he says, my God, we were pretty good basketball players. And he says, there's a kid that's going to go someplace. So Warren said, I don't know where he's going to college yet, but he says, I imagine he'll play. But they always Joliet News in the morning would always say what college won and so, and every once in a while they'd say Ron made so many points for Lincoln Way Farmer student, made so many points for Elmhurst College, and well, and afterwards. Richard Cole grew up with me, and he just honored Ron. He'd go to Lincoln Way. He had no children, but he'd go to Lincoln Way when he played at home to watch him play.
Wow. Now, how'd they decide to go into teaching?
Well, when he went to college, I think the first year he didn't really know what he wanted, but then I think after that he knew he wanted to be a teacher, I think.
Well, the Vietnam War was an influence too, because if you graduated from college, you were immediately drafted. There was no question about it. If you were physically able, you were going to Vietnam, and that's what happened to Bill Cordell. He's okay. He went right into officers training. That was the other way to avoid being a foot soldier there. And then teachers were badly needed, and you got an exemption if you were a teacher. And that was a big influence. Also, because of their involvement in sports, they just naturally like to be with kids and play with
Lee
kids.
ran away. He wanted to be a teacher when he went to math teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He went to college when he was a kid growing up in grade school. He couldn't get fractions to save his soul. Vern cut apples and some quarters, and she went to Mrs. Coppel and said, "I don't know what's the matter with that boy." And they would sit at the kitchen table, and finally Lee would cry or so, and I'd go to bed. And when he got in Lincoln Way High School, Mrs. Husky, she was Mrs. Coppel says, "Don't worry, he's growing so fast. All at once, he'll get the drift of it, and it'll be easy." My God, it was. When he got in Lincoln Way, he had Mrs. Husky, and she was a real top math teacher. Yeah, I don't think he was in Lincoln Way half a year, and boy, he was out on the honor roll, and he went, and math was easy for him. When he got into college, him and another fellow, the professor, they gave him a problem to work. I don't know what year it was anymore, but he said, "We'll give you a week to get the answer." So them two guys went back to their classroom, and they worked on it. 2 hours, they came back with the answer, and the professor says, "You couldn't have got it then." "No, they didn't. You must have copied." "No." Well, then they looked at it. They had it figured the wrong way, but they had the right answer. The guy, he says, well, he sat down and figured. He says, "My God, it comes out." He says, "Well, the answer's right," so I guess he couldn't believe it. After that, it was easy.
Whatever works.
I guess we always thought a bolt of lightning must have hit him. Night and day, it was just a difference.
Well, here we are.
This house was built in 1924, and been here ever since. We put this lien on 1961. Otherwise, it's the original house.
Wow.
4 years old when they built the house.
So you were 4 when they built it? Wow.
It's 77 years old, or 76.
Wow.
And the one wing of the house, that's over 140 years old.
Over 140 years old?
The one that goes that way. Yeah.
Which wing now?
The west wing that goes that way. This here was when my dad bought the farm. We put this end on and remodeled it in 1924.
Okay.
Same year we built the barn.
So the same year you built the barn, you built the addition to the house?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Let's get a look at the barn here.
And then the next year they built the pig house and the corn crib. A year later.
Now there's the pig house. Down there.
This one down here was 1970, and the one across the road was 1976.
Wow. So there's the corn crib.
Wood house was built the same year as the house, and the barn was built.
Here's the wood house. Okay, now we're here looking kind of at the barn. Now when was this built?
1924.
1924. And how many? Now your dad built it, right?
Yeah. He tore the old barn down and rebuilt this one.
Wow. So how many people did he have to help raise the barn?
Oh, I suppose there's about 15 or 18 plus 10 women that made the dinner.
Wow. So now, how did they dig the foundation?
Well, that was done a couple of weeks before they put the barn up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the concrete was all poured.
Did they do it with horses or?
Well, yeah, they dug it with a slip scraper, the basement, and then it was mixed with a concrete mixer. They had to wheel it. They didn't have portable concrete mixers done.
Oh, wow. So now, where'd you get the stone for the foundation?
Well, they got 2 carloads, a carload of gravel and a carload of sand brought in. And then there was a truck that he brought the cement.
But what about the stone, the blocks for the, where are those from?
That was from the old barn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that came out of Joliet, the stone quarry. They hauled that all up with horses years ago when they built the first barn.
Now, the old barn was down the street, right?
No, the old barn run 40 by 80 this way. My dad turned it around and made it 66 by 36.
Now, was the old barn here or was it up the road?
No, it was out here. The only thing you drove in the barn, the driveway was on the west side of the barn. This here old stone, that's part of the old barn. But from the milk house on and around to that corner, that poured concrete. The old foundation, they left that. He brought the driveway, he wanted the driveway in the south instead of the west.
Oh, so this part here, this part is the old barn foundation, and up there is the new.
Yeah, from the milk house around to the other corner here, that's all poured concrete. That's put up in 1924. This here was probably built in 1890 or something like that.
Wow, really? No kidding.
With all the horses, people go to Joliet, and then they come home and they bring a couple stone that the wagon would carry for the neighbors, and that's the way they built the foundations years ago.
Wow. So now, how many head of cattle does this hold?
Well, it holds 30 milk cows, and with the heifers fall, the 10, you can get 50 in.
Really?
You know, young, but 30 in the milking string.
Wow.
And,
Now, I remember you painting the barn a number of times. That must have been a big job.
yeah. I didn't mind the height. I painted the kilpers and everything.
Jeez.
Can't do it today no more.
No. Here's the old barn foundation. This is the old barn. And down here we have the new. You can see the poured concrete foundation. And here we are with Grandpa and Sailor walking down by the cow yard. And up here was the old pump house, or the old well house. And I guess you can see a little of the old well there. Anyhow, we'll stagger on down here. So we're following Grandpa along, and Sailor's happy to be outside. Hey, come on, Sailor.
Hey now.
Okay, so this is the old cow yard. Now, when'd you build the cattle shed?
1926.
That's built in 1926, huh?
2 years later than the barn and the house.
Wow. Let's take a little peek here at the. Trying to get through. Okay. Here we are. So now, did you just have the cows in here? Do you have horses too, or?
Yeah, well, there was years ago there was horses in the barn too, 6 head. But then when I remodeled and put the barn cleaner in, and I had the horses in there, 4 head.
Now, where'd you have the horses?
The cattle shed.
Oh, back here. Okay.
You know, when my dad came down here, he had 3 stallions. He used 3 bends for the stallions, 1 in each one.
Oh, really? Now, I remember you telling that when you got hit in the head by the bull. What happened with that?
Had the bull out breeding the cow, and then the herd was out there, and I was trying to get through, and the bull was after me, so I had to jump over the fence.
Oh, the bull was after the bull that was after the cow was really after you.
Yeah, after me afterward.
Now, what happened with the time when he hit you up against the side of the manure spreader?
Well, at the time he was in there, I was cleaning the pen out, and I would watch him, and I turned around to throw a fork full of manure in, and the next thing, boy, he knocked me. I rolled down under the spreader, and that's what saved me. He put the spreader a couple of times, moved it a little bit. Well, by that time the dog came, and then he got back in the pen, and I shut the door.
Now, that was Bimmy.
Yeah.
And Bimmy bit him, the little terrier bit him in the tail, didn't he?
Yeah. he saved my life.
The little dog. Oh, yeah, that's because a full-grown bull weighs how much?
Oh, that one weighed, I sold him about a week later, and they weighed 26.50.
2,650 pounds?
You know, over a ton.
That's a lot of hamburger.
Yeah, well, Strozzi loaded it, and I said, that bull will weigh over a ton. He says, no, about 2,200. I said, he weighs more than that. I said, you want to haul it? Yeah, free if he weighs? No, he says, well, then when he weighed 26, I think 26.25 what that weight was. I got paid for it.
Wow. I remember seeing the barn swallows.
Yeah.
You know, nesting inside the barn and flying out catching all the...
They come about in the middle of April always.
Do they?
Yeah.
Middle of April?
They got to come when there's bugs in the air because they live on mosquitoes.
Yeah, yeah. So is there anything else with this that... I mean, how many bales of hay did you have to feed when you had a full herd?
Well, I used to bale about 6,000 bales. And the barn holds about 6,000 bales. And then plus straw, yeah.
Wow.
That's generally about the average.
Really?
5,200 or 6,000 bales.
Wow.
Depends on the moisture in the year.
Jeez.
And then the silo, that was built in 1928. That was the last
Can't quite see it from here.
Plus the garage, well, we built that in 1947.
Wow. Now over here's the pig shed.
You know,
Now, how many pigs did you have?
well, I always had about 4 sows, furrowed twice a year. And I'd market about 40 pigs.
Wow.
Sometimes a little more.
Now, when did you stop raising pigs?
Oh. 15, 18 years ago.
Oh, really?
The 2 boys got married, and then I quit the hog business. I could make more money and less work feeding milking cows.
Yeah. Now, over here is where you brought the cows across the road.
It's like 4 times a day.
4 times a day. You brought the cows right, over here.
Back and forth in the morning, back and forth in the evening for 6 months.
Through here, then we brought them down the road. And into the... Now, how many head of cattle did you milk?
I generally have a milking string about 30, sometimes 28, 30, sometimes 32, but I didn't go over that.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Well, I'd have to drive in out of the barn. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now we're gonna...
I bought a pony for the 2 boys when they were small, and Ron and Lee, and then sometimes Sharon Coppa would come and Gail Harley, and they'd ride it. And that pony, he was smarter than the girls were, and he'd go like this, and he'd see if I had the reins tight. If they didn't, all at once, they'd get across the road or down in the field, and he'd turn around and run up, park by the water tank here. He always stopped here.
Oh,
If they fell off, the pony was standing here, and they were walking back. If you knew how to ride a horse, the pony knew if you knew how, because he'd wiggle his head back and forth, and if the reins were loose, he knew you didn't know much about driving a pony. And all at once he'd swing around and hold me and go.
So what was the pony's name?
Twinkle.
Twinkle? No, wasn't there one that was...
And then there was, he had 2 colts. One was Little Star, and the other one was Wonder. And I sold them afterward. Well, the one broke its leg. We had to shoot Little Star. And the other two I sold.
Wow. So were those Ron and Lee's ponies, or do y'all ride them, or?
Oh yeah, I rode them. Adults could ride them, but they were bigger than a Shetland pony. They were hackneyed, and they're better to ride than a Shetland. They had a higher neck bone, so when they put their head down, they didn't slide off so quick. And the Shetland, he was down. It was just downhill. You didn't know how to lock your feet. You'd be off.
Jeez.
You know, when a pony put his head down, he was going to buck. If he put his head way up, he was going to rear up. So after you had a pony a while, you get used to it. You knew his sign before he did it. Horses are not dumb. They're smart.
Oh, yeah.
And they're good friends. If you treat them right, they treat you right.
Yep. Okay, we're going to go take a look inside the barn and the hayloft first. There's a big open. There's one of the doors open. There's the other. So, and here is already played a lot of basketball, and it wasn't full with a hay rack. There's the basketball hoop. It's way up inside. There's the old forks we used to use. Those would attach to this runner on the ceiling, and then it would come down to here at the floor of the barn where we parked the wagon in here, where there's an old scoreboard now. And then the forks would be attached to a pulley, which ran kind of down here. And then somebody would drive a truck out the driveway, and then in turn would pull up the forks attached, and there'd be hay on the forks. And then it would slide down to one end of the barn or the other, and then drop the hay down so we could stack it or mow it. All right.
Here we shoot the bales down for the cows to eat.
So we're upstairs, and now Grandpa would toss the bales down to the cows that were all down there. So how many bales of hay when you had all your cows? How many bales a day would you need?
About 16 bales a day.
16 bales a day?
Yeah.
So when you had this full, you can see it's big. I mean, how long could you feed the cows for?
For what?
How long could you feed the cows for in a full barn?
Oh, well, from one year to the next. But I mean, in the summertime, they were out in pasture, so you fed them about 7 months in the barn.
Wow.
And then, of course, the dry stuff, like the heifers, they weren't out in the pasture, so they got fed year round till they grew up to be in the milking herd.
Oh, really? So, yeah, I remember spending a lot of time in here, mowing a lot of bales.
Yeah, got a little sweat, too.
Wow, yeah. And here's the other side. This is a little smaller. But this thing would be plumb full from these posts.
It'd be way up to the top, so you could just crawl on your belly along the hay track.
And a lot of times this was...
the windows when it was completely full. And then sometimes we had a stack of bales outside.
Oh, yeah, you had a huge mound outside.
Yeah. The one year we had a lot of oat straw. We had a big stack of oats over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Now what's the best kind of hay for cows?
Well, alfalfa, they like the best alfalfa. You get the most off an acre over the year, and you get, if the weather cooperates, you can get 4 cuttings, but as a rule, you always get 3 good cuttings. Of course, the 4th cutting was more like rabbit hay. That was short with a lot of leaves on. That was the richest hay in the alfalfa for the year.
The 4th cutting?
Yeah.
Really?
That was like chocolate on the cake.
Yeah.
But the cows, they didn't like it 3 times a day. They liked it once a day or every other day, because it was too rich. At last, it was too rich. It was just like if you had to eat all the chocolate off the cake, at last you couldn't eat it.
Yeah. So in here's now you used to grind feed in here, right?
Yeah. And
See if there's
3 tons of feed. And then it went downstairs in the other bin and we took it out to feed the cows.
too much. Wow.
There's some of your dad's play toys.
Down there.
Backhoe,
There's the silo outside, just out this
payload
window.
there. You want a view from out the window?
There again is the famous basketball hoop. Okay. Now here's the silo.
Yeah.
Can't really see the top.
That's in your shop.
And there's the corn crib out there and the tool shed.
Cattle shed.
Now we're looking out back towards the cattle shed, just where we came from. Now out here is where the manure came out, where we cleaned the barn.
I ain't cut it off of it. While that somebody'd sing a song up there. Good accordion player.
So this is after you built the barn. What happened?
Well, after you built the barn, then they'd figure out Saturday night if it was a nice night. Of course, sometimes they didn't have the roof on, and then they'd say, "You think it's going to rain? If not, they'd have a barn dance." Well, the moon light would shine in, but otherwise, this one had the roof on when we had the barn dance. And then the ladies come, brought food, and then they had a good time, barrel of beer. It probably broke up about midnight.
Oh my God!
So
Wow.
that was part of barn raising. They didn't get paid to help, Each one, when another person built a barn, you'd help them out. So.
Yeah.
But the carpenters, the 4 carpenters, they were paid because they were the ones that worked on the pile of lumber for maybe a week or two. They had everything, holes drilled and the board sawed. So all they had to do was put it together and put the wooden pegs on.
So you use wooden pegs for it?
No, it's all wooden pegged.
Wow.
So,
Why didn't they use nails?
well, they used nails on the board and that, but the big sills, they were wooden pegs. You could see where the holes were drilled in. See, that post was taken down and used over, but the post was stuck in the other way. You can see where the 4 holes were where the wooden pegs went in.
Wow.
Everything fit like a glove. They measured it all out on the ground. They laid it there, put one section up first. They put the floor on. That the carpenters did. And then there was barn raising. And then they push it up with poles and then hold it with the rope so it didn't go too far. And they haul, and they'd hold the sill up and shove it in, drove the pegs in. First it was kind of wiggly, but when they had the 4 sides up and the braces in, then it was like a box. You could roll it end over end and it wouldn't come apart.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Them old carpenters, they were real precision. And every piece was marked so they know, like that was number 1 end there, and everything was marked with a chisel. And it was all laid there, so they put it together when the men all came there. And they didn't have nothing to raise it. And it was like they have now. They had to push it up with poles, with spikes in and ropes so it didn't fall over the other way.
Yeah, wow.
And them beams are heavy.
Yeah, they are.
From the floor here up to the peak is 36 feet.
So from the floor, the top's 36 feet, huh?
Yeah, it's up to the point. But most barns ain't that big. They have cattle on the bottom. 10 feet takes it off. But this is a basement barn, so the cattle are down below the barn.
Wow. So you remember any of those square dancing songs?
Right?
So you remember any of those square dancing songs?
Oh, well, not what they had. Maybe it's the same thing. But they swing your partner, and dozy do, little chicken in the red pen kicking out the dough. Away we go. Next one hand. So, I don't know too many of them. They had a caller. And sometimes the accordion player did the calling.
Oh yeah.
Some people, you know, ladies or so, they were pretty good in music. They'd sing a song sometimes.
Wow. Okay, now what about the?
This was the first milk house attached to the barn. Years ago, they had to be 10 feet or 6 feet away from the barn. So, but my dad built it momentarily okayed it because they didn't like to walk outside. And then in the milk house, it would be raining or snowing. This way, you were inside, it was more comfortable. And the reason they thought first the smell from the barn would get in the milk. After they found out it didn't, they okayed all the farmers that shipped milk. Afterwards, they put the milk house to the barn.
Wow, really? So otherwise they were all separate, huh?
Yeah. Years ago, they had a cart, like warnings over there. There's a milk house was probably from the barn over to that milk pump house. And they had a blue-wheel cart. They put 6 milk cans full of milk and wheel it over there. Here, we just carried it up. And of course, we had a vestibule. So that cut off the smell of going over milk.
Wow.
Turned out okay.
Okay, here are the stairs that Grandpa had to come up and down with carrying cans of milk. And here we are inside the milk house. And there's the old wash sink. And right here on the floor used to be a big bulk tank. They'd hold the milk. Here's the door down, so I'm going downstairs. All right. Now we're down in the barn. So how many gallons of milk?
Huh?
How many gallons of milk would you get in a day?
Oh. 64. About 80 gallons, a little more. 8 milk cans, 10 times 10.
Wow.
Well, 80 gallons at least a day. Yeah.
So how much?
A milk can holds 64 pounds of milk.
64 pounds of milk per can?
Yeah.
How many gallons?
Or 68. Well, let's see. 8 times about 64 pounds. A gallon of milk weighs a little bit more than 8 pounds, 8 1/3 or something like that.
Wow. So how many cows would you have down here?
30 in a milking string.
30 cows? Yeah. I'll sit down here.
Looks like a dairy mine now. It's pretty dirty.
Oh, well. So now why did you whitewash the walls? Why are the walls all white?
Well, you had to whitewash your barn once a year. They claim it killed them. Bacteria or whatever it was for health. Some painted it. Most of the farmers, they had a man that he came around, he sprayed the barns, and just as soon the cattle went out in the pasture about the last of May or 1st of June, he'd come around. About an hour and a half, he'd have the barn sprayed, and then he'd leave.
Wow.
First he'd come in with air pressure, blow those cobwebs down and that, and then he'd put whitewash on. And it was hot, the air slack was lime, and that kills bacteria and everything.
Oh, really? Head over here. Now this is a stairway here up to the hayloft, and down here it goes out to the cow yard. And right down here was where the hay bales would fall from upstairs. There's the old wagon. I'll follow Grandpa down here. Looks like he's ridden a few horses in his day. Legs are all bowled out. So down here. And these things were for the water. The cows would bump it with their nose, and the water would come out. So while they were in here, they can get water when they wanted.
Go down there, take pictures of the box.
Now we're in the cow yard. Okay, now we're inside the cattle shed, and here's where they would keep the bulls. The bullpen. I can't see too much in there, but we have room for, looks like 4. There we are outside. Here's Grandpa again, and here's a good view of the silo. So now, how much corn would you put in the silo?
A good year, about 8 acres would fill the silo. Hold 110 tons.
And that was just chopped corn, right?
Yeah, the ears and all green.
And so what time of the year would you do it?
We generally fill around Labor Day. 'Cause, Lee and Ron, they didn't have school on Labor Day, and then we generally fill Saturday, and sometimes Sunday, and refill Monday. But sometimes if it rained, well, then they didn't help me. I got 2 other men.
Oh, really?
But most of the time it was Labor Day.
Wow. Now, why'd you feed corn instead of alfalfa? Because I see some guys chopping alfalfa to fill silo.
Well, they can store maybe a little more. If they're chopping alfalfa, they can do it when they're almost alone with another man unloading. But I always fed that they have to have some dry food too for bulk. Chopped alfalfa has got moisture in, and corn silage. And if you feed too much corn silage without any dry matter, sometimes they'd get a twisted stomach, and then you'd have to have the vet operate, or sometimes the cow would die on you. So you had to have some dry. A cow was made to eat a lot of roughage, a lot of bulk, you know. But you could get a little more milk out of it. They could feed more silage and alfalfa that was, moisture. You couldn't bale it when you put alfalfa in the barn at that moisture. The barn would burn down, the bales would spoil.
Wow.
But in the silo, well, once in a while the silo catches on fire in Wisconsin, and it's due to a little bit too much moisture. But that's, occasionally you read about it. When the silo's on fire, it's hard to get it out. It burns for 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow. Now, wasn't it kind of dangerous after you filled with the gas up top or whatever?
Oh yeah, well you had to have ventilation because while it was fermenting, it would turn out some gas. So you couldn't see it, but you'd get killed by that. But we always left the roof open for a week or 2, and then there's air from the chute goes up, and that takes the gas out. It's a yellow vapor, they claim, and I never seen it. And you could smell it when you go up sometimes, especially in the silo chute. But after you got up on top where the roof was open, and some farmers, they left the blower on there after they got done filling, and then before they go up in the morning, and so they'd run the tractor, the blower, for about 5 minutes. That blew all the gas out. They take another day before they generate enough gas to kill anybody.
Wow.
Well, that's like these hog consignment where they got the pit in, you know. When they clean that out, you want ventilation, boy. One farmer went down, his son was down there, was wondering what was wrong. He went down, he found the son floating. Before he got out, he died.
Jeez. And here's a barn swallow nest.
They come back every year. I don't know if it's an offspring or what.
You see it right up on the board.
I think we had barn swallows in here ever since the barn was built.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting, too. You got license plates cut for the numbers above the cows.
Yeah. That's a cheap number plate.
There you go. There's,
Well, if I were whitewash, it'd be a nice picture.
well, you know, it's been.
No cantilever.
So what's the park district going to do with this? Do you know?
They want to make a mini farm out of it. I don't know. They want to have a cow and a calf. I don't know. Hog house, they want a pig and some little ones. And the kids in town know what animals are.
Yeah. You can see it's the Ronley Dairy Farm from Mokena. So we're back inside. So you use this for silage, right?
No, ground feed.
Ground feed?
Said I ain't fed them with a scoop, but when your dad and me, they'd use a little scoop. And then they have on top of there how many scoops for each cow according to production. 3 dippers, 4, 4.5, twice a day.
Wow. Now you had calves in these little side pens, right?
Yeah. Before that pen, 4 in the other one. Sometimes some on this side too, yeah.
Yeah. So how many calves a year would you want?
Oh, maybe 30, 40 calves a year.
Oh, really?
But most time one cow had one, but once in a while we'd have twins. No, I mean, and we'd raise the calves from the best producers, always, and the rest we sold for veal. Once in a while we'd raise one or so to butcher.
Huh. So here we are going down by the corn crib.
All that's in there, Pearson's corn head.
Oh, really? Hey, what was that building over there?
Huh? Them are chicken houses. At the brooder house.
Oh, really?
That's where you raise the little baby chicks, and then when they get big enough, you put them in the other one, they're laying out. Yeah, it holds about 1,600 bushel a year for and about 3,000 bushel of beans.
Wow. Now, when was this built?
1926.
No kidding.
That little hole down there, it looks like a pigeonhole, but that's where the cats come in, and the doors are shut, and they catch mice.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, I remember shoving a lot of grain out of here
Oh, yeah.
and filling it.
Yeah.
So who designed these buildings? Who designed them? I mean, who said, you know...
My dad drew the pledge for this building.
Did he really? So how did he know how to...
Years ago, they had corn on one side, oats on the other. And then the elevators just came out. And this is one of the first elevators that was in Frankfort Township. And then they put the oats upstairs. They made the thing smaller and held this as much grain. And the elevator only cost $60.
Wow.
What they saved in the building went towards it. And then they didn't have to shovel the grain. It's always harder to shovel a load of ear corn than it is the husk load when it's green.
Oh, yeah.
We had to take the horses off the wagon, raised up, the corn went in, we had it unloaded in 5 minutes.
Wow.
Saved a lot of labor.
Oh, yeah. Because, you know, you can open up both sides of this, and then you drive the wagons from this end out through this way. There's the house.
No, it's a well built.
Oh, yeah. So why'd you have the slots in there? Why not just have it completely closed?
What?
Why have all the openings between the boards?
Well, that's for the natural air to take the moisture out of the ear corn when you picked it. If it was closed up, it'd mold on you.
No, really?
And if you get it too wide, you'd have to pick too early. It has to be more matured out in the field before you can pick. Some of them were 8 feet wide. This was 6 feet, so we could start earlier, and we'd have it full. Or some of the rest was just first start picking.
Wow.
Being in the dairy business, you didn't like to do too much field work in the wintertime. You wanted to be done so you could take care of the cattle.
Huh.
But sometimes the weather was bad. You didn't get it all picked till February anyhow. Just too much snow on the ground.
Jeez.
But most of the time, we try to get done before Thanksgiving harvesting.
Yeah. We're upstairs, and this is where they would, these big bins to store the grain. See, here's one with some soybeans. Probably all soybeans in here, but they would drain them out through these little chutes in the floor. And then over here on the side with the corn cribs. And this was the elevator here that came up from downstairs. And it would go up to the ceiling, and then it had a big chute you could direct, wherever you wanted either the corn or the beans to go. In here we could. There's another big bin with some holes in the floor. Looking over. So this held soybeans and oats. And here we are coming up to the tool shed. Now right in here, there used to be an old blacksmith shop. Look at the old building. It's kind of a ride, but anyhow, we'll go check in over at the tool shed. Okay, here we're looking into the sun, but this is the back side of the granary. Coming around. There's the breeder house. Oh, yeah. And the cattle shed, pig shed, barn and silo. Here we are in the tool shed, and here is a classic tractor.
You drove them two tractors quite a few times, Brian.
Yeah.
Corn wagon.
So,
In 1951. Still runs good, and now it's 98.
so when did you buy it?
It was built in 1951, and I got it about in 52 or 53. And
Wow.
used it all these years, it still runs good.
Wow. So how many horsepower?
Huh?
How many horsepower?
Oh, I suppose about 32. It's probably as much as the G, but this is high compression. The G wasn't high compression, but the G weighed 1,000 pounds heavier than this one. So it was just a heavier tractor, stronger tractor. This one I used cultivating corn, cutting hay, raking hay, pulling wagon, hauling manure every day in wintertime. Good tractor.
Wow.
Still a good tractor.
Hey, can you start it?
Huh?
Can you start it?
I'll have to sell it.
No, can you start it?
Oh, you want me to start it?
Yeah.
Oh, I can start right off.
I mean, this is great because we just got, well, not just, but, for Christmas, a calendar of John Deere tractors, and a lot of these were in there for old antique tractors, and here's the working model. Hopefully he gets up there okay. So he's not a little stiff. See the old gear shifts and okay. I'll never forget that. Hard to see, but
It's a two-lugger.
it's what?
It's a two-lugger.
What's that?
Two-cylinder.
Oh, two-cylinder.
The farmers call it two-lugger.
Wow. That's classic. God, yeah. Here's A picture over from over here is the old flywheel, and my gosh. Now, which one did you roll over?
This one.
You rolled this one over?
Yeah, that's why that thing is bent. Yeah, I got to put a new air stack on it. It rolled right completely, right upside down, sitting just 90 degrees.
How'd you do that?
Well, I was running the tractor on the corn picker, and Larry pulled the wagon up, and I thought he had the tractor away, and he had it hooked up. I started up, and the tractor, the big wagon wheel got underneath the tractor, just tipped it right over. And Jesus, I heard the tractor governor open up, and I looked back, and I thought Larry was underneath it, and he was behind me yelling, "Ed, I'm all right." And boy, what a relief. So we had to go get the G, tipped it upside down, back on his wheel, and it started up. The oil run out, so we dragged it home, and it had to get moved. The exhaust pipe, and that one we straightened out, and the wheel, steering wheel was bent, we straightened that out. And putting acid run out of the battery, and we put it on the acid back in and that, and some oil, and started right off again.
Wow. Now here's this is your little Cub tractor, huh?
Yeah, that's the one I cut along with.
Now when'd you get that one?
Well, that was really Richard Cole's. He had it here for years, stored it and cut the pipe with wood on there. Then when he died, I had it, and I said to Bernadette, "That's your tractor." She said, "You keep it. I don't need it." So she gave it to me.
Wow.
And I had it overhauled about 2 years ago. Talking to me about it.
And here's your 2520. This is a good tractor.
It sure is.
Now how old is this one?
That's a 1970.
1970.
Yeah.
See, it looks a little bit similar, like the A, but it's
That one's got 70 horse.
70. Wow. Wow.
No, that one's nice. It got power steering. That drives like your car. It's as easy as your car.
Oh yeah.